What are the current treaties that are in place around nuclear weapons? Because I know that the five permanent member states of the UN Security Council that you mentioned there are treaties that govern some of this. What are some of the ones that are currently in place?
So the landmark treaty is the 1970 Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, right? So those 5 states that we just talked about are members of that treaty. And underneath this treaty, they actually agree eventually to get rid of their nuclear weapons. It's in Article 6 of the treaty. And in exchange for that, the other members of the treaty agreed not to acquire nuclear weapons, right? And so this treaty is nearly universal. There are only a handful of countries not in it. And this is what has kept actually the problem of nuclear weapons from spreading much further. But that treaty isn't enough, right? Because it doesn't have specific steps that countries are supposed to follow to eventually get rid of their nuclear weapons. And so what grew up over time were several treaties between the US and the then Soviet Union, now Russia, to reduce numbers of nuclear weapons. The one treaty that is currently in force is called the New START Treaty. And that, apologies for my dog, doesn't like that treaty. No. That treaty limits our strategic nuclear weapons to a relatively small number, right? 1,750 deployed strategic weapons. That treaty was just extended last year, and that's a really good thing. It was extended for 5 years because it puts a cap on the number of weapons that at least the US and Russia have. There are no other countries that have actually negotiated limits on their nuclear weapons. And that is part of the problem. You see now China is building a lot of missile silos. We think they are planning to ramp up their nuclear weapons to achieve some kind of parity with the United States. Right now, they have about 300 nuclear weapons, whereas the US has more than 4,000 all told in its arsenal. There are other treaties that we have, multilateral treaties that have been signed to kind of try and contain the nuclear arms race. There are a couple that ban nuclear testing, not entirely, that have been in effect a long time. The Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which would ban all nuclear tests, including underground testing, that has been in limbo for 20 years. It has not entered into effect, although most, exception of North Korea, most countries with nuclear weapons have not tested in a long time. And then one final treaty is called the so-called Ban Treaty, the treaty to prohibit nuclear weapons, which was negotiated. It entered into force a couple of years ago. The problem is all the countries with nuclear weapons don't like that treaty and didn't engage in negotiating it. So the question of its eventual impact is really up in the air.